Alright, that's fine. Who cares? We're good. Okay. Welcome, welcome. Alright, so I figured, even though mostly I do video game stuff, why not do some more nerd shit, right? For those of you that don't know, hello, I am Long Turtle. If you're just finding this, I stream on Twitch Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, video game stuff. Mostly, right now it's Darkest Dungeon. We talk about video games and other nerd shit. We have fun. It's good. But another big hobby of mine that I like is I've actually been a DM for about 12, 13 years. And I've recently been trying to make some content for it to help some people out along the way. So if you're a new DM, and it doesn't matter, I mean, most of my things that I'll discuss here will be, you can put it across Dungeons & Dragons, Pathfinder, whatever you want. It's all good. You know, I have a podcast called Does a 38 Hit You that I do with one of my fellow DM friends that we do information on stuff. But I figured beyond that, doing an actual video could be pretty cool to show you some of the things that I do. Now, when I started out DMing, a lot of stuff happened that was just like things and stuff that you're just like, holy shit. For instance, where's shared with me? So if we go to like some of my old campaign stuff, check this out. This is nuts. So when I used to write stuff down, let's look at like right here, the Tomb of Alistair Mozir. This used to be like dungeons I would write out. So like, if you look at this here, it's gonna be hard to read because I know the font's only 11 and it's hard to see on here. I checked it earlier, but don't worry. For when we start actually typing some stuff out, it's gonna be fun. So, like, as you can see, it's like a huge description of the dungeon and all this stuff. I have Area 1. I did all the boldface, like, stuff I read to people is the first thing in bold. This is the descriptions right here. I had all the different traps and everything all here. Different, like, reflex saves, all this stuff. Everything, areas, all going down. And this dungeon, I think, took them maybe 3 sessions, 4 sessions at most. But realize if you look right here, it's 23 pages long. So this is what I did to myself all the time. Now, 3 to 4 sessions, that's like 2 months, but you have to imagine writing effectively like 6 pages a week in D&D shit just for that. And 6 pages is a lot more than some people think it is. Especially for having to create things. It's not like just writing a story. You have to create something that you read to people and they react to, which can be extremely, extremely horrific for some people when they're starting out. Sippy time. Give me 1 second. My door's actually open, and my significant other is teaching from home, so I don't want her to have to hear me yelling about fighting goblins. Give me 1 second. Okay. Yeah, so I have a, sometimes my voice broadcasts, it's not good. So as you can see, all this different stuff, and I can just keep on going. I'm sitting here scrolling while I'm sitting here talking to you, and it's just all the things. So, like, just everything, and I'd read this, you know, and then I have a whole thing for myself and break it down. This will take 2d4 plus 2 rounds, and there's 6 zombies in the room with the undead abomination, like, just all this stuff. And, this is a writing style some people like. And if you're here for that, maybe I'll do a video that's kind of like this, though I don't do this anymore because I just don't. Because it takes forever, and it sucked out my will to live. And the problem with that is not that it's bad if you really, really enjoy doing it, but for anybody that likes to do role-playing, even as a DM, you're going to run into times when you're just, like, sad about it. I have other things in my life that I was doing. I play tabletop games, I play video games, I go out and socialize quite a bit. I'm not a recluse nerd, which, if you are, that's also fine if you're an introvert. I'm just not. So my time was somewhat precious to me in that regard. So I figured if anybody has been struggling with this, where they write all this crazy stuff and they get all lost and they're super frustrated, may I offer my way of doing things now. So let's get rid of that there. And we'll just go back to my drive here. Some of my little Darkest Dungeon info. I write stuff up, little notes for myself. And I have everything here. I have Bloodmarsh documents. Bloodmarsh was a town that I made for a 2-person campaign. And here's all the sick shit with that. I literally, population, gold peace limit, wealth overall, it's democracy, all the races. This is literally just the history. Is like a page and a quarter, like, for no reason. And just like taverns and inns, I had all the taverns. I made menus with all the prices for everything. You don't have to do these things. I have an 8-page town. You can. It's not terrible, but all this extra information people don't really need. There's a way to compress that down a lot, which we could also go into maybe in another video. But yeah, fuck that. So I'm going to show you my process now, and I'll give you reasons why I do these things. Okay. So we're going to up this to, for the title, we'll just do 14. I put it in the center. I bold it. Now, this is also the really thing. You could just do, like, if you want to, you could do, like, session 1. Let's just make something up. So let's say this campaign, let's just say you want to do a campaign, but this works for one-offs even easier. But if you're somebody who's like, but is this going to work for campaign play? Absolutely. Absolutely it will. So what you want to look at is, like, let's say goblins are attacking a town, and eventually they're going to go to a goblin cave, and they're going to find a, like, down there is an emissary that's staying with them from, like, an orc that's been there for, like, a week to kind of, like, I guess, direct their efforts, and you can question this orc, and he'll tell you that basically he works for a higher tribe that's getting the goblins to, like, attack nearby farming communities and, like, destroy food crops, because this big orc clan is about to have an invasion on the whole region, and they're trying to destroy, like, supplies, and that's what these goblins are doing. One little piece of a larger whole that the players can get lost in and do, right? But let's just say it's a one-off, maybe even two. This still kind of works for it, doesn't it? Because you can always tree branch off this if you want to, or you can just end it right there and say goblins attacked the village, you fucked them up, and let's move on. So, in my world of fantasy, goblins are the little green goblins from Warhammer and, you know, different stuff like that. And what they look like in Pathfinder 1st edition, which is what I play. So let's, I don't know, let's call it, because it's a bunch of little guys, a bunch of them. Let's call it, like, the Green Tide Attack. That sounds catchy, doesn't it? Alright, move this back to left align. We'll go drop this down to 13 so it's not nuts, and we'll take off bold because we don't need to bold everything. So now we have the Green Tide Attack. So my basic idea with this is going to be break everything down into some scenes, is what I call them. You can call them scenes, acts, parts, whatever you want. We call it part 1, 2, and 3. Let's do that. Normally I do scene, let's do part. So part 1, we're going to put our colons there. Oop. Part 2, and we're going to do part 3. There we go. So, the reason I do part 1, 2, and 3, and I'll explain this. So, over time, I've come to realize that every single time I'd write a session, I have all these things that I want to happen, all this crazy cool shit, and before I know it, the players have done a third or half of it or 3/4 of it. Then the session ends. It even ran long sometimes to 4 to 4.5 hours. And we cut it off, and in my head at first, I'm like, oh, cool, I have extra shit. Sorry, excuse my sippy time. So with that, I would be like, all right, well, now maybe I have enough stuff for a next session. But as you start to kind of see how much stuff you have and how much it takes for people to get through things, you're like, ah, shit, that's not going to be another session. I'm going to have to write anything anyway. Then you're going to start thinking about what the players did, and you're going to be like, well, I could probably make something cooler than what I had as part 3, since they only got to, like, 1 and 2, as an example, or, you know. And I'd just be like, alright, well, I'll just scrap what I had, and I'll just rewrite the whole thing from that point that they ended. So I ended up getting rid of that anyway. So I find you want to keep part 1, part 2, and part 3 for specific reasons. And what you're thinking of when you're doing this is, what can the players do in an hour of real time? 1 hour. That's what you want each of your parts to be, roughly. It can go a little longer, a little shorter. That's not even a big deal. So a lot of people think they have to write for 3 to 4 hours. You could have a 2.5 hour long session and be like, all right, guys, and that's where we're going to end it. They aren't going to be like, what do you mean? It's only 3:30. We end at 4. It doesn't matter. Talk about stuff. You know what I mean? Like, ask your players what they thought of the session, what they plan on doing. These are all totally fine things. So I try and keep it to part 1, 2, and 3 just to simplify things, and I'll explain as we go on. So you don't want to put too many things into one session. It's okay to have a little bit less. It can be really, really frustrating to have a lot more, because you're just wasting time. And as a DM, the number one thing I want to start to get across in my videos is you do not have to probably spend as much time as you are, and help you out to live your life a little bit better. So we're going to come up with 3 basic ideas of what we want to happen in a session that might take, like, roughly an hour, right? So let's say the Green Tide attack, let's say this party has just gotten here, and they're passing through, maybe, on their way to do something. Doesn't matter, you make up what you want. It's your world. So let's just say part 1 is first attack. And that's just going to be, you're going to see me look down when I type. I'm not one of those people that can do the typing where it's all cool. I type like a mutant. It's fine. So we're going to do first attack, and let's do, if we want a first goblin attack. Now, this is not going to be the first attack that has happened to the Goblin Village. This is going to be the first attack that has happened to the Goblin Village when the players are there. So let's say part 2, after they experience this first Goblin attack, which occurs at night, because why wouldn't Goblins attack at night? They're awesome. Let's just say part 2 is going to be the next day. So this is going to be the day after the attack. This is going to be when the party decides what they want to do about the goblins, and we'll get to that for part 1. And then part 3 is going to be, you know, defense of the town. Alright. And, let's just, you know, we can name the town. Let's just call it a farming town. Make names that are stupid, by the way. It makes the game better. So we'll just call this, the town of, defense of Green Harvest. There you go. That looks catchy, right? That's not even a word. There we go. So there, defense of the town of Green Harvest. And now we have a name for our cool, stupid farming town that obviously farms different vegetables and stuff like that. And they probably have some animals, which goblins will actually just take. But let's say it's predominantly vegetables, but the goblins have mostly been trying to take, I don't know, chickens, sheep, whatever the hell. And let's say there's not lots of it, but what there is, the farmers are pretty psyched about keeping, right? But at the same time, they're burning down parts of, like, the farms, and they're like, oh no. You know, you don't have to think that hard into it. They're fucking goblins. Alright, so after I have come up with my 3 parts and just make titles for them, and the whole idea is, as you saw me just going through it in my head, I was like, what is this going to be? We'll do 1, 2, 3. Simple ideas. Keep it to, like, 1 sentence. Part 1, the goblins attack at night while the players are there. Part 2, the next day, the mayor asks the players to make preparations to fight the goblins. Or the mayor asks them to defend the town. Okay? Part 3, the next night, after Part 2's day, defense of the town of Green Harvest, the goblins attack again, but the players are ready for it. Simple and easy, right? So, after I've done this, And keep in mind, bear with me, there's going to be parts that surround this page right here, but what I want to get into your head is this is your sheet that you kind of have up in the background that's always going to be there to bring you back to where you want to kind of focus, right? So this is going to be like a focus page entirely. So I like to do little bullet points. You can do it as number points, whatever the hell really floats your boat. I do little bullet points. Makes it easier because I have, 1, 2, and 3. I don't want more numbers all over the place, right? So let's say the first goblin attack, let's say PCs wake up to screams, and let's say, not explosions. We don't really want explosions. I don't think goblins are wielding grenades. And, fires outside their window. Because they're staying at a tavern somewhere, probably, right? So why not? Now, keep in mind with some of the things, you'll notice I'm saying stuff that is not written down here and things that happened before or after, whatever the hell. If you really, really want to, you can just put up, like, intro, PCs traveling to a city to enlist in their army, right? And you can just tell players this is what's going to happen before a campaign or whatever. Traveling through Green Harvest and stay at a tavern. Tavern is the Foaming Mug, run by, let's do a halfling. Halfling named Francis, right? Francis Patchfoot. Boop. Names. Trust me, you'll just learn to make stupid names as you go. I love making stupid names because I don't want any named Francis Patchfoot, right? What is all this? No, we don't want Jug. Yeah, that's how you spell foaming. Cool. You're gonna see a lot of errors, but that's what the computer's for, to help you with, so that you can just kind of pound through things. So there you go, right there, intro. You tell the PCs that they're traveling to this city to enlist in their army. There could even be a rumor that there's like rumors of orc tribe invasion in the region. Boom. Traveling through Green Harvest and staying at a tavern because it's just on the way there, and the tavern is the Foaming Mug run by a halfling named Francis Patchfoot, if anybody asks. You know what I mean? It's not a big deal. It's really not. So let's bring ourselves down here. So the PCs wake up to screams and fires outside their window. They look east and see people running away. And goblins and weird-looking dogs attacking people or farms. Actually, you know what? We'll do this. We'll do you one even better. They look east, see people running away, and goblins running with animals back into the forest. Woo! So there you go. So now they have that. So they look east to and see people running away, and goblins running away with animals that they took from the farms to the east back into the forest, right? And you can even put them there running. They look east towards the town farms and see people running away and goblins running with animals back into the forest. Now, you can add extra stuff. Notice how it's like I added town farms. I wouldn't have to because I know what's going on in my head. But you might want to, and honestly, the more detail you, like little things like that you kind of add in there, the more you might be able to look back and remember certain parts. So things like an intro and stuff like that, not always bad, right? I do it sometimes. So now that you've done that, you're like, all right, cool. And we're going to have goblins that are still there. PCs run to farms, and there are goblins and goblin dogs attacking farmers. And we can put in parentheses, let's call it, let's say these farmers, you know, they farm whatever the fuck. We'll call them the Greers. We'll put humans. Boom. If you even need to. I would just assume they're mostly humans. So now the farmers have a name. So if somebody asks, it's the Greers, right? And you have an overall family name. We'll talk about coming up with random NPC names later on in this video, right? So now you have this here, and that's like your first thing. So you're wondering, like, well, what about fighting them and stuff like that? Now, I just put in that they run to the farms and see goblins and goblin dogs attacking farmers. And that's kind of all you need. They're going to fight some goblins, and they're going to fight some goblin dogs. So, sippy time. Sorry about that. Something to keep in mind is you don't have to have battles. Every single battle doesn't have to be some epic thing where you crush the party or there's some big thing that whoops their ass. This combat is meant entirely to have the party just beat the living hell out of goblins and goblin dogs, because it's dope. Now, you can still play that intelligently and make it kind of hard for them, but effectively, I'm not going to go into the full mechanics of that fight, because A, you might be running D&D 5th edition, you might be running Pathfinder 1st edition like I do, Pathfinder 2nd edition, you might be running, I don't know, Warhammer Hero Quest thing, that's different stuff. If you look inside the manual and the player's handbooks and such like that, they're going to show you how to build encounters based off of challenge ratings. And I will go over eventually how I build combats full on, and like some of the things I do to make more interesting combats, but that's for another time. Let's focus. So, yeah. In this, I know goblins are challenge rating 1/3, and goblin dogs are challenge rating 1/2. So, if I wanted a very, very equal fight that the PCs can kind of fuck them up, you just do 3 goblins and 2 goblin dogs. It's challenge rating 2. The party's level 1. There's 4 of them. It's a semi-decent encounter for them. They'll be fine. That way, you also have 5 creatures to their 4 players. Action economy. If you don't know about action economy, we'll talk about that in another video as well. So, now that you have this, they're going to do that combat. They're going to beat the hell out of those things. I wouldn't have to type it for myself, but let's just throw it in there. So let's say you're completely kind of like new to this and you're trying to figure it out. PCs look to forest and see the goblins are gone. This is just to reiterate to the players that the rest of the goblins escaped, so they don't have to start chasing them into the woods. And here you go. If PCs go to forest, shoot them with arrows. No. We're going to do that in a much, much different way. You could do that. You can always make it so that they turn back because they realize the fight's not good for them. The more you play with players that are beginners, the more you're going to be able to direct them away. If you're playing with people who are like, no, I want to go into the forest and chase after the goblins, well, they start shooting you with arrows and you can't see anybody. If they just keep trying to browbeat their way through something that seems extremely unlikely, put that player down into negatives, and the rest of the players will probably take that person away. and then talk to them aside and be like, if you're not really supposed to, like, go towards something because it seems like a really bad idea, like, you should work out that that's not really where you should go and try something else maybe. That may seem like the players don't have complete control over everything, but to be honest with you, that's an illusion. Players don't have any control for the most part. It's kind of where you want to take them within your realm. So, also, a good player is going to realize that, not try and just say, I want to test the world and be an asshole. Like, don't worry about those people. You can get rid of them and find new players. So, PCs look to the forest and see the goblins are gone. And then the last thing we're going to put in part 1, let's say Mayor of Town offers 400 gold pieces to kill the goblins. Could be repel the goblins, next attack, blah, 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 blah. Doesn't matter. It's not a big deal. Now, if this is a one-off session, you want to basically make it, instead of kill the goblins, you want to make it repel the goblins. If I wanted to make this into something else, we'll continue on this path to hell. I'll have a video where I'm going to take this and probably expand on it if you were doing a campaign, so you can kind of see what I'm about when I'm talking about campaign sessions, right? Cool. Alright, so Mayor of Town offers 400 gold pieces to kill the goblins. Cool. The reason I chose 400 gold pieces, very simple. This is going to be like an opening for a first level party. First level party, average 4 players, 100 gold pieces apiece. That's an awesome reward, on top of any treasure they might get eventually. That's kind of cool. Now keep in mind, once again, if this is a one-off, you can change that and just put, repel the goblins. It does not need to be capitalized, Mother of God. And we'll leave that there for the time being. So the repel the goblins, whatever. So, the next day, right? Everybody goes to sleep, they put fires out, whatever. We're going to go to the next day, do our little thingy. So, now we're going to have, think about these players wake up. Think about, like, the 13th Warrior, if you've ever seen it. They stayed the first night, and these crazy cave people attacked. And then the next day, they were like, now we know what's going on. Let's prepare for it. So what we're going to do is you're kind of going to... This is a little trick. You're kind of going to ask the PCs kind of like what they want to do. Oop. So the PCs prepare for next attack. Ask them... Are they going to build defenses and traps? Look for able-bodied... let's do able-bodied villagers. And let's say, move the animals. Now, these are just 3 things that I'm randomly coming up with. This is not any specific thing. So, the reason I did it, though... Is this going to say, for the next attack? Yeah, of course. That's fine. The reason you do that, though, is so the PCs prepare for the next attack. This is just so you know that this is going to be the focus of the next day, because it's not super, like, accurate. So you're going to put down that you're reading, ask them, are they going to build defenses and traps, look for able-bodied villagers, and move the animals. These are not things that they have to do. They could literally be like, no, we're going to barricade the tavern and try and get them to come to us and do nothing else to help the villagers. They might be those kinds of people, right? So the reason that you're doing that is you're planning the ideas in their heads. You know, what are you guys going to do? Are you going to, like, build defenses and traps, look for able-bodied villagers, move animals? Like, what are your plans? Like, you're giving them suggestions of things that they could do that they'll maybe just go, oh yeah, we should build defenses and traps. Oh yeah, we should see if there's some villagers that can, like, help us. Maybe we should move the animals. You're planning semi-decent ideas in their head that are also very general and decent ideas for defending a town. That you're like, okay, you would expect they do that, right? And why this is cool is now they'll start discussing it with each other. So, let PCs discuss their strategy. And ask them to draw out defenses and traps or any other strategies. Now, this is a cool thing that a lot of DMs early on really fuck up, where they think D&D or role-playing is about the Dungeon Master creates all this shit, does all these things, and the players just sit there and play their character and get to have fun. Sorry, a little sippy time there. That couldn't be further from the truth. You should be involving your players wherever you can to cut down on some of the work, but also, they only really have to make one character. You have to continuously make the world they interact with. So anytime you can involve them, it should be a totally okay thing for them, and an okay thing for you to go, alright guys, let's discuss your strategy. Why don't you guys draw out where you want the defenses to be and traps, or anything else that you want to do, where you want to move animals, where you want to put able-bodied fighters, whatever you want, right? And you can put whatever parameters on this you see fit. You could be like, you guys have enough to make, let's say if you're doing by a grid system of 5 by 5 feet, be like, hey, in a given day, I want you guys to roll for, like, survival. And whoever gets the highest roll will go off that. And let's say, alright, if you guys get, like, a 15 or under, you can make 20 feet of wall and you can make 2 traps. If you get a 15 or higher, you can make 40 feet of wall and you can make 5 traps. And you can tell me what they are and where they're going to be. And this is cool because it's not super specific things right off the bat. The players can be like, alright, well, we have resources. Where are we going to put it on the map? And you let them draw it out. Even if you're doing Roll20, there's a draw tool. You can get a map of the town. Totally doable. And if anybody has questions about that, you can leave that in the comments. I'm going to post this up on YouTube so that people can just watch it after it's done being live. I will always still go back and look at the comments and help people with specific questions. But maybe also you guys can give me some ideas of some other content you might want me to make to help you along this process. But I'm being kind of generalistic right now, just to kind of help you get your juices flowing here. So, now that that's done, you're like, alright, cool. And that's it. That's all you have to do for part 2. Super simple step, very generalized, very, very easy, right? So, if you wanted to add more to that, you could do something weird like, let's say this went pretty fast, right? And you're like, man, I wish I had an extra thing. You can always add extra things like, let's say, local like farmer who thinks he runs the place tries to fight PCs so he can defend town and take their money. So what I mean by that, so let's say a local farmer is like one of those dudes that you see in movies and things like that, right? Where he's like, you know, I'm the top dog here, and like me and these 4 farmers, we run everything in this town. Like, we're not the mayor or anything, but nothing happens without our say-so. You know, one of those villainous type side characters you see in movies. You could have this guy, you know, try and hassle the PCs in the tavern and have like a non-lethal fight, and I don't know, maybe have like a town guard militia captain who let's say in this town it's small, there's like 5 militia dudes and a town captain. Let's say he comes in and like breaks it up and brings them out and blah blah blah. You could do that if you wanted to. I'm not going to do that for this example because whatever. So we'll just keep it down to just these two things. So this is something that you're looking at and you're like, wow, that's like not a lot of stuff. But just asking PCs to actually come up with stuff collectively and draw it out and plan things with as much as like one roll. Like let's say if you even want to make it because you don't want to forget, roll survival. Take highest player's roll. So let's just say, like, you know, under 15 equals 20 feet of wall and 3 traps. Higher than 15, above 15 equals 40 feet of wall and 5 traps. There you go. Boom. And like I said, you can add these little things just to help you remember, depending on how much you need. I would just come up with what I want on there and just tell them. You can also, even if you like, so you don't get lost, remember with writing, you can always break up whatever the fuck you want. You can just sit there and be like, boom, I'm going to make that in bold. This way I can always look at it, look back down and see it. So whatever, right? It's your world. So that's all out of the way. So now we're going to go with Part 3, Defense of the Town of the Green Harvest. Now, you would expect in your head, you might start thinking to yourself, oh man, I'm going to complex this up. I'm going to make them attack from the west. Don't do that. Have them attack from the east like they have been. They're goblins. They're friggin' idiots. Just let them do this. And they're not hobgoblins, most likely, so they don't have any militarization. They're just running out doing stuff. If you take a 6-year-old and give a 6-year-old 3 fucking sodas, and then, like, set your watch for 10 minutes, and then come back and see what they're doing at, like, a child's party or something like that, that's basically what a goblin is, except they have no problem taking, like, a knife and, like, throwing it through someone's face. Keep that in mind. So let's say, alright, Defense of the Town of the Green Harvest, night falls, and the goblins come charging. Not charging, they don't really charge. Let's say running out of the forest. Alright, so right here is really, really easy for you. You can just say, like if you're learning, like, oh, combat, what are the goblins going to be? And the goblins come running out of the forest, right? So let's just say, like, goblins, just as a point, you can just put it, goblins, goblin dogs. You can have the goblins riding these goblin dogs. And let's just say, like, they have, I don't know. They could have a little goblin wizard if they wanted to, but most likely not. They'll probably stay back at, like, a goblin cave. Let's say they brought something crazy along, right? So let's say they brought, let's say, and a bear, right? So let's say they beat this bear and they keep, like, a leash thing on it and shit like that, and it's got a bunch of, like, bones and stuff tied to it, and all that different shit. Now, you can, once again, you can put parentheses in if you want that, like, bear is ridden by 2 goblins, or more, whatever you want, has bones tied to its fur, and wooden, like wooden shields, or I don't know, wooden pieces. Oh, here we go. Fur is not spelled like that. And pieces of bark tied to its front arms. So keep this in mind. So here's what we got. So you don't have to do this. In my head, I'd already have it thought out, but if you're new, once again, you might be like, alright, goblins and goblin dogs, got it. Bear? Because this might be 3 days after you wrote this, and you might be a little hazy. It's okay. Happens to all of us. So you see bear is ridden by 2 goblins. It has bones tied to its fur and pieces of bark tied to its front arms, kind of like makeshift dumb armor. But what you want to practice doing with a lot of this is, like, take that. Take Bear's ridden by 2 goblins, has bones tied to its fur, and pieces of bark tied to its front arms. You don't have to read that to your players. You read that yourself and think about it. Close your eyes for a second. You don't have to look at the players while you say it. You can close your eyes and imagine that. Imagine a bear coming out, and it's like trampling out of the forest because obviously it's not happy about its life. It's been basically tamed by goblins, effectively, who probably prod it and stuff like that. It's got a big collar on its neck that they made out of like vines and shit, that the 2 goblins are riding it and like giggling, and they're probably throwing spears at people, and it has all these bones tied to its fur, which is all matted in certain places because it sleeps in a shitty cave with goblins, and it has these big pieces of broken off and stripped bark tied to its like front arms that like make cracking sounds as it starts like running on all fours. Like just stuff like that you really want to describe to your players. They'll be like, oh, that's fucked up. So we got that now, right? They come in, and that's pretty much it. The players are gonna, like, PCs fight them and repel them. They can chase the goblins back into the forest or follow trail back to their cave. Follow a trail back to their cave. So now you have basically the, let's just say, Mayor thanks PCs and pays them, and there is a giant festival held in their honor. Boom. So right off the bat there, you can see it's just very simple stuff. Night falls and the goblins come running out of the forest. Now you know what's happening with Defense of the Town of the Green Harvest. Goblins, goblin dogs, and a bear. There's the enemies that are going to happen, right? The numbers, you just equal it out to the challenge rating. If they were a level 1 party or a level 5 party, I could still literally say goblins, goblin dogs, and a bear. Because I could have any number of them with any character levels I want to add or anything depending on your system. But you just want your basics, right? So PCs fight them and repel them, and they can chase the goblins back into the forest or follow a trail back to their cave. This is going to be if you want them to find the cave at the end of the session, and maybe that's even the end of your session. And if you're doing a campaign, session 2 is going to be they're going to go into the cave and fight off all the goblins and take them out, and take out their leaders, all this stuff. But if not, they just chase them off and chase them back into the forest. You can say they cut down the rest of the goblins that they see. And what you have for like a single session, a one-off, you have the mayor thanks the PCs and pays them, and there's a great festival held in their honor. And you can have your session end with just describing the festival and all this stuff, and basically say, like, you know, somebody says the next day they want to paint you before you head off towards the city, and Green Harvest from that day forward would have a holiday celebrating these 4 champions. And the players would be like, fuck yeah! People worship us! And that could be a single session. It'll be awesome to people, right? Like, they're like, that was really cool, and you gave them something really cool to end with. But if not, you could actually still have the mayor thanks the PCs, pays them, and still have a giant festival. But he says if you, like, he will pay you further to actually exterminate the goblins. Or you have him, like I said, all the way back up here. This is how cool this is. Let's change it. Right? Mayor of town offers 400 gold pieces to kill the goblins. So they have to go kill them. So now the PCs fight and repel them. And they take out Ken. They chase the goblins back to the forest, or follow a trail back to their cave. And they find the cave. Right? So now that sets the stage for you for session 2. Where you're going to basically say, like, hey, they're going to go into this cave. They're going to fight more goblins. Let's say outside of just the bear, let's say the biggest thing in there is maybe there's like an ogre, but maybe he's like a broken ogre, so you take off half of his hit points and you take whatever damage he does and drop it a die. So if he does 2d8, have it be like 2d6. Because if they're level 1, let's not kill these motherfuckers. And at the end, there's like a goblin shaman. And all he does is he has maybe 2 or 3 magic missile spells he can throw at a party, and he has some goblin bodyguards, and that's it. Like I said, it doesn't have to be these amazing, epic fights, because the party's going to have a good time anyway. You know what I mean? And if you're good enough at combat and reading the combat rules of whatever like game system you're playing, you can do some pretty cool stuff with very little. I like it. So now that we look at this, we're going to scroll down to page... Oh, wait, there is no page 2. So this right here, that is your entire session right there, right? This is the whole thing. I'm going to take a little sit back. I'm kind of a semi-fat person, so I can only sit up straight for so long before I hurt myself. So right there, we look at this. And I just made this up just off the top of my head, just now. So the Green Tide Attack, we have S1, so you can keep track of sessions. If you're doing a one-off, you can just call it the Green Tide Attack. Doesn't even fucking matter. And we're going to do... You can click up here if you're doing this on Google Drive, which I suggest because you can work on it from any computer anywhere just by signing in on the internet. And it's free, and it's easy to use. It has decent enough stuff. You can click on this. Automatically, it'll take the top thing. Session 1, Green Tide Attack. Fuck yeah. So now if we look at this, right there, Session 1 Green Tide Attack. If you're doing a campaign, right, we could do new. I'm going to do folder. And let's just say that this is the start of a campaign where they're going to fight like a giant orc thing, right? Let's call it the campaign Orc Tribe campaign. Or let's call it War of the... What do we want to call these guys? You know what? Let's go with like a GW 40k old thing. Let's call them the Crescent Moon Tribe. Who gives a shit, right? Let's do it. War of the Crescent Moon Tribe. You don't need to start there. So you could just call it that there for your folder. Did I do add a folder? Or did I just fuck that up? New. Oh, folder upload, file upload. I just want a folder. Here we go. Whoops. War of the Crescent. I don't know if that's how you spell Crescent. It's not. I'm not good at spelling. You guys will pretty much figure that out immediately. Crescent Moon Tribe. There you go. Boop. So now I've created that. War of the Crescent Moon Tribe. Boom. Green Tide goes in there. Now I have a folder. S1, Session 1, the Green Tide Attack. So when you're looking at that, you basically have your first session, and you'll know where it is all the time, and you'll keep everything organized away from your other stuff. This way, if you're like me and you have 5,000 projects, which I do often, all this stuff in here is normally in a folder. If you go with Shared With Me, it's my Blood March folder, my Cholt folder. I did a campaign in a huge jungle called Cholt for the Forgotten Realms campaign setting in Dungeons & Dragons. And that works. That helps you keep everything together. So like I said, so let's just go over this. This is what's really cool. This is why I love doing sessions like this and writing them out. So I'm going to go over my entire session to you really, really quick. And here's how you can do it. So notice how we have all this information, but if I wanted to, I could be like, all right, so what are you doing a one-off for? Oh, it's going to be called the Green Tide Attack. The PCs are traveling to like a city to enlist in their army because there's like an orc tribe invasion in the region. And they go to this town called Green Harvest where there's goblins attacking, and they're gonna defend against the goblins. They build up like town defenses like in the 13th Warrior movie and everything, and then the goblins attack a second night and they fight them off, you know? And like it's gonna be really cool. There's gonna be like a big bear, and that's it. You're just like, yeah, so it's goblin attack. That rules. If I wanted to D&D Inception this, where you want to plan an idea that's just one sentence, the Green Tide Attack. It's about goblins attacking a farming town and taking animals, and the PCs get paid to defend the town. There you go. You're done. So you can break it into any level of information you want. I could get in-depth and go over every single thing. So part 1, this happens with this. Part 2, this. And I could talk about the session for 10 minutes if I wanted to. Or if somebody who doesn't really want me to do that asks and says, what's it really about? You have something you can fall that back and look at and be like, It's just about this. So, this is part 1 of how I do sessions. There is some other stuff. And most of it only applies if you're doing campaigns to a certain degree. So, let's say we're going to have all of this here. You have it all written out now, so now we know what's going to happen. You're wondering to yourself, well, dude, how do you keep track of all this stuff? I want to keep this to 1 page. I don't want more pages, right? So let's say you want a little bit more information. And here's how you can do it. Like I said, you want to keep everything. If we're using Google Docs, you have tabs. So let's say, let me make this bigger so we can see again. All right. Green, tide, attack, encounters, right? All right, so here we go. We're going to unbold this. We're going to make this 13. There we go. Let's do scene 1. Scene 2. Scene 3. Oh, that's fine. We can fix that. Easy enough, right? There we go. All right, so like I was saying, you're like, oh man, but what do I do for specific encounters? You plan out the encounters away from this. This right here is your dope shit that you can always fall back on and always know where the hell you are in the session. And eventually the campaign, it makes it a lot easier. And this is why doing everything on a computer and tabs, you can also print these out if you want to, right? Like, that's fine. So let's go here, and let's say scene 1, we're going to do, all right, the goblins attack, we're going to do 3 goblins and 2 goblin dogs. All right, so now I have those. Scene 2, nothing, because they're not going to be fighting. Scene 3, we're going to do, let's say we want to do 2 separate fights, right? We're going to have wave 1 and wave 2. Fight 1, fight 2. Here we go. So fight 1 is going to be 6 goblins and 2 goblin dogs. Right? We're really laying it down on them. Now, keep in mind, I'm saying that because the goblins are going to be running down a hill and there's going to be traps. So with all the traps, you can actually increase the challenge rating a little bit, right? Just think about, like, balance on those types of terms. Once again, same exact thing, kind of like they were fighting before. A few more goblins, not a big deal, right? And let's say, even if I wanted to, we'll do 6 goblins, 2 dogs. Let's reduce it. How about this? 3 goblins. No, we'll keep 6. 6 goblins, 2 goblin dogs. A lot of them are going to die, and 1 level 1 goblin rogue. And he's going to be all stealthy. You can put a character level on him or some equivalent in a different game system, right? There you go. Boom. And we can obviously, with correct grammar-ish, we can put commas, goblin dogs, and 1 level 1 goblin rogue. You can even do that if that bothers you. It's whatever. And then fight 2 is going to be 3 goblins, capitalizing for no reason, and the bear ridden by 2 goblins. And what you want to do is you can also, for the sake, if you're worried about like the goblins just getting shot and the bear being like, oh no, there's nobody directing him anymore, once he makes it to the party, he's just going to start fighting them anyway, or he's just going to start destroying whatever's in front of him. He makes it to the party. You can just say that. It's fine. And there you go. So now we got this, right? So this is how cool this is. You have your intro, your part 1, your part 2, your part 3. You're like, all right, part 1, goblin attack. We're doing this. We're doing that, right? Goblins attack the farmers, the Greers. The humans are being attacked. The PCs come up to the goblins. You're like, all right, what's the fight going to be? You just switch over right here to encounters. You're like, all right, scene 1, 3 goblins, 2 goblin dogs. And you put them on the table and you do your thing. Now, as far as like stats for things, we do Pathfinder, Legacy. This is how I do it anyway. Reference. You can have any type of reference material that you really need. I go to this here, right? And I go to Bestiaries. Go to Bestiary Monster Index. And here we go. Let's scroll down. Where do we got? Where do we got? Where we got? Goblin. Right here. I got a Goblin. Let's just say I'm going to copy this. Make another tab. Like I said, man, tabs, they'll save your life. Let's paste that. Boom. Go to it. Goblin Dog. I want to go to my Bestiary again. Goblin Dog. So right here, it's like, all right, well, Goblin Tide attack, right? What are you guys fighting? We're going to do this, blah, blah, blah. All right, I know I need 3 goblins, 2 dogs. You put them on there. All right, what's the goblin stats? Click on Goblin. Here's all of his stats right there, right? So now you have all of his, hey, he's going to attack, short sword +2. Roll a d20, add +2 to it, you know what he's doing. Hey, they want to attack him. He has an AC of 16. You got it. Goblin dogs, right over here. Boom, look at that. 2 goblin dogs, cool, got it. Here's 2 goblin dogs. What's their speed? Like, you go down 50 feet, bite +2, and allergic reaction. It's right there. You're all good to go. So I use these generally as a tab. I play Pathfinder, so I have this resource readily available to me. If you do not have this with whatever game system you're playing, I suggest you can either jot down some notes, which I will do at some point, probably show people how to do that, just to make things really basic. I don't actually have to have all of this information. I could probably type in Goblin Dog and put in, like, initiative, AC, hit points, and saves, and then, like, its speed and its attacks, and it'd probably be fine. I don't need all the rest of this stuff down here. But it's just a very easy thing to do, and I think 5th edition D&D has something very much like this that's actually even better. And just any other RPG, you can also scan things if you have a scanner or a printer, or just open up your bestiary or whatever monster index you have, and just use tabs. Old-fashioned tabs, pieces of paper, bookmarks, whatever you have around the house. You can also draw out some notes about their stats on a note card. So, we got that going, right? So, one other thing that's going to happen is people might be like, hey, we're at the tavern, we're at the Foaming Mug, and we talked to Francis Patchfoot, and we're gonna see if there's any unsavory-looking fellows that want to play cards, right? So this doesn't even have to happen for session 1. This is just something I do in general when I make a campaign. So here we go. We're going to do another Untitled Dot. Like I said, man, tabs. Tabs are going to be your life when you play as a Dungeon Master. If you play with a laptop in front of you, otherwise you're going to be printing a lot of shit out. I don't suggest it. It's 2020. Let's be serious about our lives. All right. So this is going to be very, very simple. Boom. Bold. NPC guide. There we go. Alright, you can keep this bold if you want to. Let's go with names, right? And we're going to go with, you can call them quirks. We'll just go with details. We all know what details are. And you just go down the line. Now, you can go online and find lists of names. There's random name generators. You can just make up your own. So let's say we've got, like, Redrick, Iron Heel. That's not how you spell heal at all. We have Grevin, Fire Hands. He could be like some type of wizard maybe, or just a dude, whatever. You could go with Old Man Hal. Because you can go with nicknames in here. You don't have to have, like, full-on names. Maybe there's a guy named Old Man Hal, and he's literally just the dude they all refer to as Old Man Hal. He doesn't have another name. You could go with Justana, Silvermane, whatever you want. Just names. You'll find a bunch of them, right? So let's just do 4. So details. Fancy Cloak. Oh. Let's do Eye Patch. Engraved set of swords on back. God damn it. And let's do, I don't know. Let's do, what do we want? Let's do glowing magic boots. Or no, you know what? We'll go without things like that. Let's do this. Let's do scar across side of face. And if you want to, you can literally come up with the story already. You could be like, all right, where did they get that? Orc blade slashed face, right? So you already have the story lined up, right? And you could also go with, like, very, very simplistic stuff also, like shaved head on one side with, let's just say, like, tattooed symbol, right? All right. So right here, you don't have to put them all in bold if you don't want to, because you might get lost in, like, details and stuff like that. Let's just say we unbolded them. And anything that you format, just format in ways that you can tell what the hell everything is. You could even put it in italics on one and not on the other, if that makes it easier to see, like that. You know what I mean? So let's just say you're going along, you're like, all right, let's do this. Also, keep in mind, NPC guide, you want to keep your titles just so you kind of know what you're looking at up here. It makes tabs easier. S1, Green Tide Attack. Boom. So we go to tavern, traveling through Green Harvest, blah, blah, blah. They go to the Tavern, the Foaming Mug, and the players are like, we want to look for some unsavory people that could be, like, playing cards or something. You're like, don't worry, I got you. There is a guy with an eye patch that is sitting at a table and dealing out cards to much younger people. Let's just say that. You just decide he's going to be, like, old, right? So let's just say you just put a 1, or just put anything. 1. And people go over, and let's say this is going to be Old Man Hal. So when he goes to introduce himself, you don't start with, hey, who's this NPC? And be like, it's Old Man Hal. Just be like, oh, you see this guy as you approach him with an eye patch over his right eye, and he looks like an older gentleman. As you approach him, he grins at you and asks if you want to be dealed in and introduces himself as Old Man Hal. It gave you time while you were describing all that. You're looking on the screen here and choosing a name. And then I just put 1 and 1 so I know that Old Man Hal matches up with eye patch. You can also do things like you can underline it if you're only going to use one name at a time. You still want to have something that differentiates who used what. So you could even put it in here. Like, you could literally just even put symbols. Like, you could do this and arrows, whatever. Now we know those match up. And the reason you want to do this is because now you know that Old Man Hal is part of this world, right? And when you're here, you could even write in, like, they go here, and you could make this a little bit longer. You could even put in met Old Man Hal and played cards with him. You can type that in while you guys are playing the session, while they're talking amongst themselves. If you even want to, and you're like, oh man, I hope I don't forget that I wrote this in, go here. Wow, can't highlight things today. Boom, bold. Now you're going to see it when you go through this again, right? Met Old Man Hal and played cards with him. So when you're going to write session 2, if this matters, if you're doing a one-off, don't worry about it. You don't need to worry about this or even writing this in. But if you're doing a campaign, write that in. You go over it when you're going to write your next session. Go over to NPC Guide. Take that out. You can replace it every time you remove one. You can write a new one. That's fine. I've done it before. But you might have a list that's literally 20 things long. Now, the one suggestion I have, though, if you're writing an NPC guide that's really long, have half of it be names and half details, then go to the second page, and then have half of that page be names and half have details. You don't want to have 5 pages of names and then 5 pages of details, because you want to be able to look at a page and see details, names, details, names. You can put details first if you want to, too. Always lead with a detail, because they don't always know exactly who they are. If somebody says, like, we're going to ask the bartender, like, who the best fighter is, At that point, if you want to just choose a name, you could, but you could also say, instead of him saying anything, he points, and as they turn, they see this very, very muscular woman with an engraved set of swords on her back that looks super ornate, and as they walk over to her and they start talking to her, like, she looks them up and down, and she goes, "I am Justana Silvermane," and you just put it right there, right? And like I said, as long as you know what you're doing, you can do this really, really quick. You can even literally, if you don't have time to type stuff, highlight it and go bold. And then just highlight engraved sets of swords and go bold. Now you know that you've picked those two out with each other. And then the next time you want to go right here, just go with underline and go with underline. Like, if whatever method you can use to remember things, it's up to you. So I always like to have an NPC guide pulled up. So when people ask me, like, because sometimes players will try and test you, or they really do just want to interact with your world. They'll be like, "What halflings can I find around here?" You find Redrick Ironheel, and he has a fancy cloak. Like, there you go. And you can build off that. He has a fancy cloak. You could describe different patches on it, and then you can just write that in. Fancy cloak, and you could, and the players are going to be like, "What are you typing?" Like, just keep talking to them and be like, "There you go, with fancy patch. It took me 4 seconds. They're not going to care." And there you go. That's how you take care of that. So very, very simple things that are going to help you just get this stuff done quickly, and you have stuff that just makes you more prepared. And I want to talk about this. If you're wondering to yourself, you're like, "Wow, this is some really minimal shit." The reason for it is, like I said, as I showed you before, like, if you look at this right here, this one page, this is my whole entire encounter right here. Now, do I have 2 extra tabs of stuff like encounter, right? And I have NPC guide, and I have my 2 tabs of doing all this. I have these tabs pulled up even when I write everything out most of the time. But keep in mind me going from this back to what I started at, right? Like, when I used to write a session, it would be this. Just tons and tons of different, like, description of everything. I would literally read this to my party verbatim. I'd be like, "You see stairs made of flagstone leading down into a long hallway with copper doors on each side of it and a pair of copper double doors on the opposite end." Like, but the reason I don't do that anymore is, instead of doing that whole thing, right? I want you to start training yourself to open up your mind. So instead of me having that whole thing written out, I'd put, like, all right, room with copper doors and ornate copper double doors on other side. So that's like 4 less sentences than my description. But as I'm looking at it and I read it, I can transfer that to the players and just look at it as like, all right, you see copper doors, and they have oxidation on the corners and some scratch marks on them. It looks kind of old, but as you look across the room, you see a set of copper double doors that are ornate, and they have these designs running down the sides of them with different depictions of people fighting monsters. Like, you just think ornate copper doors, see what pops into your head, and add a little fantasy twist. You know, just get used to just coming up with stuff organically, and as you're describing it, and in your head, you keep seeing more and more and describing it to them, you're also not reading off stuff, so you're looking at them and engaging, saying, like, you know, you see these copper doors, and they're ornate, and they have all these different designs running down the sides, and there's this huge depiction of this group of people fighting a large dragon that has fire coming out of its mouth. Like, and they'll be engaged more than you looking down and reading it like this. So I encourage people, instead of writing everything out, to start making quick notes that they can look at and then expand upon it to their players. And everything is quick. So right now it's just like, you know, you guys talk to the mayor, who introduces himself as Grevin Firehand, and he's wearing a fancy cloak with fancy patches on it, and he has a shaved head on one side with a tattooed symbol. You could even combine 2 of them. But they're going to think that I wrote that. Like, as his name. I didn't. I just chose it off the NPC guide. Every now and then you might want to. You can put in, it's okay. You can put in mayor of the town, parentheses, put his name in there. But NPC guide is one of the smartest things you're going to do that the players will never know about. So keep that in mind. So I've rambled on for about an hour and 10 minutes now about writing this session. This is going to be the first of quite a few videos I'm going to put out there to help you guys and different ideas. Now keep in mind I might find something different. Being a DM is going to be something that if you do it for a long enough time, you're going to try tons of different things. And this may not work for you. You may actually be one of those people that you need to write out the Tomb of Alistair Mosier with all this crazy shit in it. You might need to have the trap right there with all of its stats. You might need to read this off because you don't want to come up with stuff in your head. You find it easier for yourself to write it all out. If you are one of those people, I want to let you know that's okay. It's just realize that me writing a 23-page dungeon in my newer style that I use now would probably be 3, maybe 4 pages of 4 sessions as opposed to 23 pages. And then I can just do literally my encounter table for different rooms. And I can just pull up my tabs for all the stats. Now, when you do character levels with Pathfinder specifically, I have different stuff, but I wanted to keep this a little bit generalized for you guys. In case you're not playing Pathfinder, you can still do all of this. So yeah, with that, I feel like it can take a lot of pressure off of you. I just wrote this entire session up while explaining it to people, right? With making NPCs, I wrote that up in an hour and 11 minutes, effectively, if we're going off timers right now. And, you know, it used to be the person who taught me to DM said for every hour that you're going to be playing in a game session, you're going to have to put in 2 hours of preparation. So for every 4-hour session you run, you're going to have to prepare for 8 hours. I do not believe in that anymore. So on top of that, I want to say the reason that I like doing this also is as you start playing, players are going to throw crazy shit at you. They're going to do things that they want to do. If I had put in here, they're going to repel the goblins the first night, and then the next day they're going to travel to the goblin cave, and then they're going to go into the goblin cave, they might just be like, no, we're not going to go to the goblin cave. Then what are you left with? Like, if the goblins are coming to them, there's nothing they can do. They could leave the town, but you could have the goblins, you could have this same exact encounter right here. Like, just go to encounters. You could have this encounter on their way to the city, and it's still cool because it's so generalized, and I didn't spend a lot of time. I don't really care if they don't defend the city and they leave, and all of part 3, I can just quick change it to, instead of this, just put it in. You could even put it into a note. Look at this. Take this out. If party doesn't... Oop. Defend city. Have encounter in forest on the road. There you go. So all that, they don't do any of this. And they're still going to have a huge fight with 2 waves of enemies that's going to happen in the road. But I'm not worried about if they just skipped basically all of this, half of my session, because they decided, no, we're not gonna do that. Now, you're gonna have a shorter session probably because it's just gonna be this combat here and this, and then the next day they're gonna leave. You're gonna say they go down the road and get attacked by this, but that can still easily be 2.5 to 3 hours of gaming, and you can have liberal breaks, especially if you're doing a one-off. Just hang out with, like, your friends. Enjoy. Let them talk a little bit. And before you know it, 3 hours will go by and they'll still have a full session and have fun. Always remember, in the end, everybody's doing this because they want to have fun. Or at least they should be. And always remember, everybody should be having fun together, respecting each other, and working together. You could tell your players, well, guys, I kind of hoped you wanted to defend this because you're good characters. Then they might say, yeah, we should do this. Might have to direct them a little. Sometimes people are murder hobos. You can't do anything about that. But yeah, this is going to be pretty much what your setup is going to look like. You know what I mean? Just very, very simple. I can literally fit the entire thing on one page that you can see right here. And that's what we're going to do. So this is going to be video 1 for you guys, just, you know, checking out how I write my sessions. We'll go more in depth with different things. If you're wondering to yourself, hey, you didn't show me how to write out maps or anything like that, my personal stance as a DM is maps are the easiest and most trivial thing ever. I've seen people labor for 3 days at a time over maps. But the thing is, if you're going to make a map, go find a map that's already drawn up that's beautiful, that you're putting on Roll20 or you want to print out, and use that. Or if you're drawing out maps, let's be serious, if you're putting it on like a grid with wet erase markers or something like that, no matter how artistic it really gets more often than not, you're just drawing a bunch of squares, rectangles, and circles that don't look amazing. So your description's going to be what matters. You don't have to plan out some super elaborate thing. I draw most of my dungeons literally off the top of my head as I play. So if I have like a full dungeon that's 8 areas, I'll just say what's in the areas in the descriptions and maybe some generalized stuff. I don't have to sit there and draw out every single detail and draw it all in there. I'll just make stuff up that looks interesting at the time. We'll get into more of how I format bigger dungeons and area things. This is all very generalized. You can use any map that has buildings, or you can just draw 4 buildings that are farms and some of their fences and stuff. It doesn't really matter. You put the enemies wherever you want them. When you have a few more specific things, like a mansion people are doing or something like that, you can use those maps, and I'll have some examples of how I draw those out and how I approach them. It'll look a little bit different than this, obviously, because I'll have areas instead of parts. But that'll still literally be my session. Will still be session 4, the mansion. I'll still have part 1, 2, and 3 probably with a few little notes, and then I'll literally have a separate thing that'll have, instead of all this, Area 1, Area 2, Area 3. It might be a few notes, like, you know, I might have, like, Area 1. We'll do main lobby with stairs. And I'll put, let's get these guys out of here. And Area 1, maybe it's one of those things, I only want 1 or 2 bullet points. So let's go right here. And it'll be like, you know, large ornate staircase with red carpet. And we'll do fountain in center of room with, I don't know, let's say a lion statue. Boom. And that'll be my Area 1, and I'll have, like, Area 1 through Area whatever the fuck, and I can always refer to this for just details. But like I said, I'll come up with a whole entire thing of what the main lobby with stairs looks like. These are just the 2 bigger parts of it I can have. And, you know, you see some cabinets around that have, like, you know, beautiful-looking China-type stuff in them. You see over there a large table with a wash basin for guests when they come in. They can wash their hands and their face. Back in, you know, medieval times, people could do that. Just simple stuff. But we'll get into more elaborate how I do big dungeon encounters and stuff like that. And eventually, when we build off enough of what I'm telling you here, I'll go into, obviously, how I change things around and make things with character levels for Pathfinder specifically, which is, you know, can be a lot more complex and sometimes isn't. I'll show you the different tricks I use for that and how I build encounters. Encounters will be a pretty big thing to talk about, so we're not going to get into that here. So I thank you guys for hanging out with me, and I thank you guys for watching this. I hope this helps some of you really cut down your time on your D&D preparation, have a lot less stress and a lot more fun as a DM, and realize that you don't have to slave away for 8+ hours a week to appease your players. It's going to be just fine. You can write up most sessions in an hour, maybe 2.